conservative, constitutional. It's the Andrew Cooperrider Show, keeping you informed on what's going on right here in Kentucky.
And welcome, everybody, to part 2 of a 2-part episodes regarding the race to replace McConnell, the race for that Senate seat here in Kentucky. We reached out to the Daniel Cameron, the Nate Morris, and the Andy Barr campaigns and sent them over a list of questions to respond to. And they'll be responding to the remainder of those questions today, including questions about Israel, why should we pick you, McConnell's approval rating, and the national debt. Very exciting topics. I know you guys are on the edge of your seats. Of course, there are some people that I know that listen to the show and everything else that are interested in hearing from Michael Ferris. He's also running for the Senate. I did a lengthy episode with him where we talked for some time about a month and a half ago. So I encourage you, go check that out too as well. You can hear his thoughts on a lot of different things there. Several of these people, including Barr and Morse, we haven't heard from on this show. So I want to make sure we gave an opportunity for them to fill us in on where they're standing right now as we're coming into the Christmas season. I know everybody gets a little distracted with Christmas. I understand that. So first, starting us off, though, we have a question regarding Israel. Obviously, this is a hot topic. The question that was sent to them was regarding Israel. What role should America play in supporting Israel? What should the relationship look like? And what are America's interests in Israel? Now, the order that they're responding to this in, to remind you from last episode, has been randomly chosen at each question. So it wasn't like we chose an order at the beginning and then we just stuck with that order. It is randomly chosen every time for every question. Starting us off, though, for this question regarding Israel, we have Andy Barr's response. Let's take a listen to that.
The U.S.-Israel alliance is unshakable, and it is the most strategic alliance that we have in the world. Israel is the United States aircraft carrier in the Middle East. We have a strategic alliance for a variety of reasons, mainly because Israel's enemies are our enemies. And as Israel counters those adversaries, they counter America's adversaries. When the mullahs in Iran or when the radical Islamic terrorists declare from the river to the sea, or when they call for the annihilation of the state of Israel, in the same breath they chant death to America. So when Israel defeats and degrades the capabilities of radical Islamic terrorists, they protect the national security interests of the United States. We have critical intelligence sharing partnership. We have major technology sharing partnership where the United States supports Israel's defense capabilities. And there is technology sharing on the issue of missile defense in particular, whether it is Iron Dome or David's Sling. We help them, they help us. It is vitally important for regional stability. Israel is a counterweight, a democracy, and a freedom-loving nation in an otherwise unstable and dangerous part of the world. Israel creates deterrence for the United States. What happened on October 7th was an act of complete and total barbarism, and President Trump deserves credit, and I think the Nobel Peace Prize, for ending that conflict. But the way President Trump ended the conflict between Israel and Gaza must be understood. President Biden's approach, Democrats, pro-terrorist liberals who apologize and defend Hamas and what happened on October 7th, they do not understand the reality, or maybe they do and just have a warped sense of morality here. What happened on October 7th was barbarism, plain and simple. It was terrorists killing innocent people, whether at a music festival, taking hostages, killing babies in front of parents, killing parents in front of children, raping women in front of fathers. It was a total barbaric act, the likes we haven't seen since the Holocaust. If you want to understand why Israel believes in peace through strength, it's because that they are committed to never having the Holocaust ever happen again, and they're committed to never having October 7th ever happen again. In contrast, President Trump, instead of blaming Israel and calling for a premature ceasefire, President Trump was able to achieve a more durable peace in the Middle East because of three factors. Number one, he gave the Israeli Defense Forces and Netanyahu the time and space to demilitarize and degrade the Hamas terrorists in Gaza. Secondly, he created important diplomatic relationships with Arab countries like Qatar, like Turkey, to put immense pressure on the Hamas terrorist leadership. And then finally, he cut off the head of the patron of the terrorists. Unlike the sanctions relief strategy of the Biden administration that gave billions of dollars in sanctions relief to the Iranians as part of the JCPOA and the Iran nuclear deal, President Trump pursued in both the first term and the second term a maximum pressure policy against Iran, and then he took out Iran's nuclear program. That cut the head off of the snake, and that prevented Iran from funding Hamas terrorists. That is the essence of peace through strength. That is why President Trump has achieved a durable, lasting ceasefire, a return of all of the hostages, and that's why President Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. As the next United States Senator from Kentucky, you can always count on Andy Barr to be a unwavering friend of Israel and a defender of the U.S.-Israel alliance.
So there you go. There was Andy Barr's response to the question. Next up, we have, responding to the question, Daniel Cameron. Once again, the question was, regarding Israel, what role should America play in supporting Israel? What should that relationship look like? And what are America's interests in Israel? Here's Daniel Cameron responding to that question.
You know, when and we've talked about Israel before, but I think it's important to our interests that we support the lone democracy in the Middle East. And I think it's important. Obviously, that is not without limits. You know, we have to have a partnership that is mutually beneficial to the United States and prioritizes our interests. But ensuring that we have at least one stable partner in the Middle East is really important. And again, I just cite you to the fact that you know, President Trump has found a way to start a peace process that countless presidents have tried. None have been successful, but he is barreling down the road of success. And I think it's important that, again, we get out of these foreign entanglements and focus on the homeland. And as I said earlier, that's going to be my priority in the United States Senate.
All right, that was Daniel Cameron responding to the question about Israel. We now have Nate Morris, of course, responding. Once again, the question is regarding Israel, what role should America play in supporting Israel? What should that relationship look like? And what are America's interests in Israel?
Israel is an indispensable ally of the United States in the Middle East. And I look at members of Congress like Ilhan Omar, who traffics in Jew hatred. Absolutely unacceptable. This person should be expelled from Congress and deported. We must stand strong with Israel. This is a way to have a safer world and a world that we know that we can continue to have a very strong ally in the Middle East to protect America and America's interests. And I think President Trump got it right with the war in Gaza. What he's doing there is absolutely phenomenal, and bringing peace to the Middle East once and for all through negotiation and through with the least amount of conflict possible. That's true leadership, and that's what we need to be doing as a country.
There you go. There was Nate Morris's response. Now, as you're listening to these, you may hear a little bit of background music. Full disclosure, I said this last episode too as well. The campaigns did not put that in there. I did. I was going through, I was editing this to put their answers together. I didn't edit anybody's responses, of course, but I was watching them and I'm like, hey, it's such a sterile, quiet background that they're talking in. And it wasn't like a typical podcast where you have a little bit more ambient noise and things. So it felt a little uncanny. So I put a little bit of music back in there. I literally just typed into the background music provider I use, inspirational music, and just randomly picked music for everybody. So yeah, I did that. If it annoys you, I'm sorry, but I just felt like it was kind of weird otherwise. Well, coming up after this, after the break here, we're going to ask them a question about why should we vote for you? We'll have that in a few short minutes. And you're back here on a very special episode on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. We're doing a video forum with Daniel Cameron, Nate Morris, and Andy Barr responding to questions. We sent these questions to them a few weeks ago. They cut videos. They've responded. These responses are, of course, a few weeks old by this point that you're listening to it, but I don't think that takes away from much of what they're discussing. Not much has changed, relatively speaking. I hope, because I'm also recording this like a week or two before you hear it. So let's just hope that's the case. But anyway, so we want to ask a question about why should we vote for you versus your opponents? What makes you best? The exact question here is, why are you the best choice for senator? And here we go. Starting us off once again, randomly chosen order. We have Daniel Cameron responding.
Well, look, at the end of the day, the folks at home are going to have a decision to make. And I think by and large, it has to be made based on track record. And I hope I've demonstrated over the course of my time as Attorney General that I will stand up and do what's right for the men, women, and children of our 120 counties, that I will advocate for our values. I will advocate for a merit and opportunity society. I will fight for and in defense of our law enforcement community, that they know that they have someone in the United States Senate that will say unequivocally that we will never defund the police. I think we've got to have somebody that is a constant advocate for our coal and natural gas industries. Again, I talked about this earlier, but the idea that there are some that want to destroy the fossil fuels industry, that would literally wreck Kentucky's competitive advantage, and we cannot have that. We have an opportunity to fill a unique space in the economies of tomorrow simply because we have an abundance of natural resources in coal and natural gas that can fuel the economy of tomorrow. We've got to take advantage of that. And you need to have a senator in Washington that is fighting for that advantage so that it puts food on the table for our people here in the Commonwealth. You got to have somebody that, again, knows that when it comes to ensuring that common sense is a part of the fabric of the conversations in Washington, D.C., you got to have confidence that the person that you send there is going to be on the right side of the issues. And again, I hope I've demonstrated that whether it was ensuring that churches will reopen after 9 days, or standing firm against the vaccine mandates of the Biden administration, or ending the travel restrictions that our governor tried to place on us during COVID, I will always have your back. And, this is an important race because it is about our kids and our grandkids. It's about ensuring that they have a country that is the best and brightest version of itself, a country that is a shining city on a hill. And a lot of you have been with me in the past, and I'd certainly be honored for your help again in this race. My family and I are thankful for you and are grateful that you've prayed for us and you've walked alongside us in previous campaigns. And, as I tell people all the time, my identity is not in politics, but it is as a Christ follower. And I think that what we need in local government and in state government and the federal government are people of faith that are not willing to cede the ground to other interests. And, Charlie Kirk died a little more than a month ago for the ideals of our founding and because he was on mission for Christ. And I think part of his legacy is that you and I recognize that we cannot live in fear, that we have to live in a spirit, as 2 Timothy 1:7 says, live in a spirit of sound mind, of love, and of power. That is our calling. It's to be the hands and feet of Christ. It's to be salt and light in this world. And it would be an honor to do that on your behalf as your voice in Washington. May God bless you, and God bless our Commonwealth.
All right, that was Cameron's response to the question here. Now we have Nate Morris responding. Once again, the question is, why are you the best choice for senator? Let's hear what Nate Morris has to say.
I am the absolute best choice for the United States Senate because I'm going to stand with Trump 100% of the time. And I'm the only candidate who's an outsider. My opponents, they are controlled by Mitch McConnell and his machine. I've run a business. I've started a business. I've created thousands of jobs. I've signed the front of paychecks, not just the back. And I know what it takes to be economically successful in our country and to create a climate that's going to make it better for your children and grandchildren to live in this country, to prosper in this country. I'm the only candidate to call for a full moratorium on any new immigration coming into our country until we deport every single one of the 20 million illegals that have invaded us. My opponents are wholly owned subsidiaries of Mitch McConnell, Inc. They would go to DC and do the exact same thing he's done for the last 40 years, which is to sell out Kentucky and sell out the United States of America and sell out President Trump. I'm not controlled by the establishment, by Wall Street, by the big banks, by the country club, or the McConnell machine. I am loyal to you. I'm loyal first and foremost to the people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I don't need the job. I don't need the money. I'm here because I want to fight, and I want to fight for you and fight for the future of our Commonwealth and the future of the United States of America.
All right, there was Nate Morris's response to why are you the best choice for senator. Now we have Andy Barr responding to the same question. Why are you the best choice for senator? Let's listen to what he has to say.
Why are you the best choice for the United States Senate? Look, there's a lot of people who say that they're for President Trump. There's a lot of people who say that they support the One Big Beautiful Bill. I'm actually doing it. I'm actually working with President Trump every single day to advance this America First agenda. I actually wrote parts of the One Big Beautiful Bill. I have a proven conservative record and can hit the ground running on day one. I know the job. The other candidates in this race can't say that. They don't have the experience. They can't hit the ground running. They would be a freshman senator and wouldn't know where to start. But I don't have to just talk about supporting President Trump or talking about being a conservative champion. I have a proven record of delivering for Kentucky and this country. And that's why I am the best choice for the United States Senate. What is that record? That record is flipping a Democratic seat to a conservative seat in the one purple swing district in the state and holding it for 7 straight elections, despite millions of dollars from Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee and others like Amy McGrath pouring in against me. I have held that purple district, fought the war on coal, led the fight for the Trump tax cuts, passed and wrote major parts of the legislation that rolled back the Dodd-Frank law and liberated our economy from damaging and destructive economic regulations, leading the fight in court, defending the president's legal authority to build the wall, voting for border security legislation, and funding ICE and deportation efforts and Customs and Border Patrol. Being a consistent defender for the cause of life and the Second Amendment and defending our troops and a peace through strength strategy, supporting our veterans and backing the blue every single step of the way. And then having the first piece of legislation, the very first bill of Joe Biden's failed presidency, he voted to veto my bill, which blocked the destructive ESG mandates from the Biden administration. And then in this term of Congress, defending the president, serving as chairman of his 2024 campaign in Kentucky, and then delivering for him every step of the way, whether it's tax cuts, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, making permanent and expanding the small business deduction, the Made in America tax provision that has brought $2.5 billion of investment to Mercer County, Kentucky in the iPhone Gorilla Glass. supporting the president on border security, on the energy dominance strategy, and working to deter communist China on their economic predatory practices, or defending the president's efforts to invest in our national security to deter our adversaries, and helping to defend Israel and obliterate Iran's nuclear program, deterring both Russia and China and North Korea. The bottom line, I'm a proven conservative. I hit the ground running. And most importantly, as your Republican nominee for U.S. Senate, I will not fail and I will not lose. The only way a Democrat can win statewide in the Commonwealth of Kentucky in 2026 is to do it the way our Democratic governor did it, and that was to win my district by 19 points in 2023. I will not lose my district. I've won it 7 consecutive times. I flipped a Democratic seat to a Republican seat, and I'll hold it. And as your nominee, I can block the path of the Democrats and make sure that Chuck Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and the extreme far left will never control the United States Senate. I will fight for you every single step of the way, and I am committed to restoring the American dream and the cause of freedom for the people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
All right, that was Andy Barr responding to the question, why should we pick you for senator? Now, keep in mind, too, this is not the order these questions came in. They came in a different order to them. I had to change up the order in order to make it work with the episode timing as far as segments go. So I want to make sure you understand that as well. Also, I do want to say it was easy, all 3 campaigns, to get in contact with them. They're all 3 of them, very willing to do this. Not a lot of pushback. Can't say the same about the 6th district congressional race, though. But you'll learn more about that one next week when I sit down with Ryan Dotson, running for Congress there in the 6th congressional seat. We'll talk about a little bit about some difficulties I had trying to get the rest of the congressional campaigns to interact with me, which is a little surprising. But when we come back, we'll be digging into the question of McConnell's approval rating. We'll have that in a few short minutes. And you're back here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Having an interesting episode, I think. I think if you guys like this, you like what we're doing here, let me know. Shoot me an email, theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. You can hit the contact tab there. You can also email Andrew at theandrewshow.com. Info at theandrewshow.com. Once again, info at theandrewshow.com. And you can go ahead and chime in. Feedback. I'd like it. It's the first time I've really done this. I haven't actually seen any other podcast really do this kind of thing, where they give the campaigns a list of questions. They put together their own videos and send them over to you. But I was very thankful all campaigns agreed to do this. But here we go. The question now answering. Once again, the order that these come in was randomly chosen by each question. Just used a random online name chooser. Once again, too, the music I put in there just to make it a little less uncanny. So here we go. Starting us off is Nate Morris answering this question here. Here we go. As of July 2025 Morning Consult poll, Mitch McConnell had a 59% disapproval rating, making him the most unpopular senator in the country. Why do you think McConnell is viewed so unfavorably, and what will you do differently than McConnell? Here we go. Responding to that question here, Nate Morris.
Well, I think that's actually a little generous for Mitch. I think the last poll that we saw just a day or so ago was far worse. But what was so interesting is that during Fancy Farm, Mitch McConnell posed the question to me to say, there is someone in this race who says he doesn't want to be like me. And I responded several times to this, and I said, I don't want to be anything like Mitch McConnell. I don't admire Mitch McConnell. I don't admire the things that he's done. I think he has been a detriment to our country and to Kentucky. And I think he is the epitome of career politicians and what they represent and why the American people have had enough of career politicians. And I'd ask the question, I don't know what Mitch McConnell would be doing if he weren't in politics. He's never had a job outside of politics. And the 2 people that are in this race are career politicians. And career politicians are the same people that blamed our president for January 6th, that continue to enact lawfare against our president, They're the people that left our border wide open for generations. Career politicians voted for gun control. Career politicians have sent our debt through the roof, $37 trillion. So for all these reasons, I think this is why Kentuckians have had enough of Mitch. They've had enough of career politicians. They've had enough of people saying they're going to do one thing and they do another. And nobody should make a living in politics. That's why I've said I'm going to serve for 2 terms. And in those 2 terms, I think we can make tremendous progress for Kentucky and for our country, and ultimately for the world that our children live in. And that's keeping us out of these crazy wars. That's sealing our border, making sure every illegal goes back, and making sure that we preserve our Constitution and don't enact these unconstitutional measures that people like Mitch McConnell have put on us and tried to put on us over and over and over again.
All right, that's Nate Morris's response. Now we have Andy Barr respond to the question. Once again, the question is, as of July 2025 Morning Consult poll, Mitch McConnell has had a 59% disapproval rating, making him the most unpopular senator in the country. Why do you think McConnell is viewed so unfavorably, and what will you do differently than McConnell? Here we go. Respond to that here, Andy Barr.
Ever since I was first elected to Congress back in 2012, I've been asked, as a Republican from Kentucky, as a member of Congress, I've been asked whether or not I'm a Mitch McConnell Republican or a Rand Paul Republican. The reality is, with respect to both of our senators, I'm neither. I'm an Andy Barr Republican. Mitch McConnell is not on the ballot. This is about the future. What I will say is that Kentuckians can count on me as their next senator to be my own man, and they can count on me to support this president. I was proud to serve as chairman of President Trump's 2024 primary election campaign in Kentucky. I was proud to have him ask me to do so. I was the first member of the federal delegation to endorse President Trump before the 2024 Republican primary. Sometimes I vote similarly with Senator McConnell. Sometimes I vote similarly with Senator Paul. Sometimes my votes are in contrast with Senator McConnell, and sometimes in contrast with Senator Paul. Again, it depends on the issue where I am, but number one, I'm going to be for this president, and I'm going to be for the people of Kentucky as I see it, and the people of Kentucky can count on transparency with me in the type of Republican that I will be. A conservative, someone who believes in limited government, free enterprise, strong national defense, someone who is a proud Kentuckian, someone who is a proud husband and father, a Christian, someone who is pro-veteran, 100% pro-life, a congressman who has a perfect A rating from the National Rifle Association, and as a leader who backs the blue. That's who I am.
Okay, that was Andy Barr responding there to the question regarding McConnell. Now we have Daniel Cameron responding to, and once again, I know it gets a little annoying hearing me repeat the question, but I think it's important you hear it again before you hear their responses. Here it is. As of July 2025 Morning Consult poll, Mitch McConnell had a 59% disapproval rating, making him the most unpopular senator in the country. Why do you think McConnell is viewed so unfavorably, and what will you do differently than McConnell? Responding to that now, Daniel Cameron.
Well, when it comes to, Senator McConnell, I've always said that when there are policy disagreements, people need to hear about those. And I've certainly made my differences well known. I shared pretty early on in this campaign that I would have voted for Tulsi Gabbard. I would have voted for RFK Jr. I would have voted for Pete Hegseth. One, they're a reflection of this administration's priorities. President Trump won the White House handedly, and he deserves his cabinet. And I think it's important, especially here in Kentucky, where the president was overwhelmingly voted into office, again, you have a senator that is going to reflect your voice in Washington, D.C., and that's certainly something that I care deeply about. And then when it comes to this race, as I've said over and over again, most Kentuckians want a senator that is going to stand up for their values and recognize that when you go to Washington, you're there as a voice for the people here back in our 120 counties. And my mandate, if I'm fortunate to win, is to reflect and be your voice. And that's what I aim to do. And I think every person that goes to Washington, D.C., every man has to stand on their own 2 feet. And I hope I've demonstrated during my time in public life that, I'm willing to do what is right by the laws of this Commonwealth and our state constitution, again, which I showed during my time as Attorney General, whether it was standing up to Andy Barr and getting our churches reopened after 9 days after he shut them down, or whether it was getting the travel restrictions that he implemented during COVID, getting those stopped so that you could travel freely again, whether it was standing up to the Biden administration that was trying to force vaccine mandates on our state. I've repeatedly done what's right by our state laws and the United States Constitution, and I'll do that in the Senate. I will be your voice because I know I'm sent there to reflect your values, and I think sometimes I can get lost on folks that have been up there, but know this, I'm not making Washington a career. McKenzie wouldn't let that happen. I've got 2 terms in me up there, and I'm coming home. We've got our oldest Theodore is as of this video is 3.5. If I do 2 terms, he'll be roughly, I think by the time I'm actually sworn in, he would, at the end of those 12 years, he would be roughly 17. So, we care deeply about our family and doing everything we can to care for this family unit. So, 2 terms will be enough for me, and I'll be ready to come home. You'll probably be ready for me to come home as well.
All right, coming up after this for our final question, we'll be asking them about the national debt. We'll have that in a few short minutes. And welcome back to the final segment of a very special 2-part episode where we've been doing a video forum with the Senate candidates the race to replace McConnell here. We've had Daniel Cameron, Andy Barr, and Nate Morris all responding to questions. If you missed that first segment, the first episode, check out theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. You can see where to listen to other shows at. You can catch that old one. Check them out on social media and all major podcasting platforms, of course, as well. Now, the question here is regarding national debt. Starting us off with this is Andy Barr. He's going to be responding to the question here. It says, a major concern for many voters is the national debt. Do you view this as an issue? And if so, what specific programs would you cut from the federal budget? And what policies would you advocate for to pay down the debt? Here's Andy Barr responding.
The second question is the national debt. What programs would you cut and how would you address it? Look, I believe that the national debt is the most serious challenge facing our country, and it threatens the future stability and prosperity of the country. It's a national security emergency. I ran for Congress to save America from bankruptcy, and I'm proud of my record of advocating for and voting for fiscal responsibility, for spending cuts, and forcing the government to live within its means. Why is the national debt important? Well, our national debt, $38 trillion, approaching $38 trillion, 125% of our total economy. Our interest payments are approaching $1 trillion. Why does that matter? It matters because it's crowding out those unproductive interest payments, debt service payments, are crowding out our ability to fund the core functions of government, and especially national defense. The reason why this is a national security problem is that those interest payments now exceed the total amount that we spend annually on our national defense. And that diminishes our ability to deter our adversaries. The other point about the national debt is the more and more interest that we pay and debt service that we pay on this large national debt, that takes away from our economic vitality. So what it means is it drives up, because the 10-year Treasury, which drives a lot of our consumer debt, that 10-year Treasury, is if it stays elevated because people are demanding more yield. Investors are demanding more yield. What that means is that drives up interest payments on the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, on auto loan payments, on credit card bills. So it really deprives the American consumer, the American household, of the economic power that they otherwise would have. And because there's so much demand for capital to flow into our treasury market, that takes away the capacity of the private sector to invest in more productive private sector investments. That saps the economic potential away from the U.S. economy. So it is a national security threat because it crowds out our ability to fund national defense. It is a threat to our economic security because it drives up interest rates and because it diverts productive capital away from the real economy. And then the last thing I would just say is, look, it is immoral that we are leaving a mountain of debt to our children and future grandchildren, borrowing against them, typically for unproductive purposes. So what have I done about it? I've been a co-sponsor annually of the Balanced Budget Amendment. I have co-sponsored and voted for some of the most significant fiscally responsible budgets, including the Republican Study Committee budget that has never passed, by the way. I have never voted for a debt limit increase without some kind of structural reform attached to it. Obviously, we have to avoid default, and that's important, obviously, to prevent a worse fiscal situation from developing with a credit downgrade. But I have always said that the debt limit law is purposeful because it requires us to do something as a condition of raising the debt limit and paying our bills. I recently voted for the Fiscal Responsibility Act. I voted for the largest spending cut in history in the reconciliation bill. Mandatory spending reform. Twice I voted for major mandatory spending reform in the form of repealing Obamacare, and then most recently the savings that we produced from dealing with the waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid, which is the fastest growing mandatory program that we have. I'm a member of the DOGE caucus and voted for a $9 billion codification of the DOGE savings, the so-called rescissions package. So there's more to my fiscal responsibility resume, but I recognize that this is a major issue and it's something that I take very seriously. And in the Senate, I will continue my work to force the government to live within its means and honor future generations of Americans and stopping this slide towards national bankruptcy.
All right, that was Andy Barr's response here. Next up, we have Nate Morse responding to, once again, the question was, a major concern for many voters is the national debt. Do you view this as an issue? And if so, what specific programs would you cut from the federal budget? And what policies would you advocate for to pay down the debt? Hearing that now from Nate Morse.
The national debt is the greatest threat to the sovereignty of our nation and the future of America. To make sure that as we approach our 250th anniversary as a country, that we can go on and we can thrive for the next 250 years. We must get our debt under control and push for a balanced budget. I think about things like DOGE, where you've got friends like Vivek Ramaswamy of mine, people like Elon Musk working together to get rid of the culture of bureaucracy and bloat that has put us in this position. We've got to get that stuff out of Washington. I think about these rescission packages, going through line by line to making sure your money, your taxpayer money, is buying and going towards something that makes sense for this country and not going into waste. I think about these globalist wars that we should never be in. I think about Iraq, the trillions of dollars we spend in Iraq. We got nothing for it. We've got a generation of veterans and their families that have been scarred because of that conflict and all the money that we wasted. And then I think about things like Ukraine. We cannot get in these conflicts that we have no business being in and that return nothing for the American people. And finally, I think about things like the Department of Education, and thank goodness for President Trump. This is a great example of all the bureaucracy and waste that has been polluting our country throughout every state and pushing these crazy agendas on our children. And the Department of Education, I'm glad, is underway and it's getting out of our system once and for all.
All right, that's Nate Morris's response. Here is Daniel Cameron now responding to this final question here. A major concern for many voters is the national debt. Do you view this as an issue? If so, what specific programs would you cut from the federal budget, and what policies would you advocate for to pay down the debt? Here is their responses.
A lot of your listeners and viewers are concerned about the national debt. That's certainly something we care about in our household. Mackenzie and I have to run a budget, and it's got to account for 2 growing boys and college down the road for them, and obviously with the 3rd on the way, we've got to start contemplating like what it looks like to have a home, pay the mortgage and pay for all the things that the boys need. And so we care deeply about a family budget and care deeply about the budget of the United States. And certainly the debt is of great concern. And I think there are things that we can do. I think that the Republican Congress has gotten us down and moving in the right direction, but obviously there are more things that can be done. And part of that is Senator Paul's got some legislation right now. I think for a number of years he was calling it the Penny Act. I think because of inflation, it's like the 6 Cent Act now. But that's certainly something that I would be wanting to be helpful on. And then he's got another piece of legislation that I'd love to co-sponsor called the REINS Act. Essentially, the REINS Act would say that, if an agency spends more than $100 million or so, then Congress needs to be able to look at those expenditures. I think it's a smart idea. You at home, as you're running your home and running your budget, with a spouse, you got to check in and say, hey, we're spending on this or spending on that. Is that okay? I think that's a sound principle that should be brought to the United States Congress in terms of the agencies that sometimes have run amok, frankly, because they're not really always under control. We've got good leadership in the White House now that is focused on reining in waste, fraud, and abuse. That's something that we have to continue to work towards and work to make sure that government's running as efficiently as possible. But there are other things that can be done, whether it's the Penny/6 Cent Act or the REINS Act, that will allow us to continue to ensure that we are cutting spending so that we're not leaving our posterity with insurmountable debt. And so that's something that'll be a priority for me in the United States Senate.
All right, there you go. That's the end of our video format. Next week, we'll be sitting down with Ryan Dotson, who's running for the 6th Congressional District, having a conversation about that race. I tried to do actually a similar thing that I just did with the Senate candidates over the last 2 episodes with the congressional candidates. Unfortunately, the Dotson campaign was the only one who responded they would do it. I reached out to Alvarado. I reached out to Deanna Gordon. And I reached out to their campaign contacts, texted with them, followed up with them, and they didn't respond. They said they didn't say they didn't want to take part, but they just didn't respond to the requests. So therefore, I decided, hey, Dotson, since you want to put yourself out there and talk, I'll just give you all the time and we'll have a pleasant conversation. So that's what happened. And you can tune into that there next week on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Till then, I'll be seeing you.